It's December 1st, 2016. I'm Ainsley Earhart, and we start with a Fox News alert.
Fire, partner down! See, my partner's down inside the residence. Copy. Partner's down inside the residence.
Well, here we go again. While you were sleeping, another police officer was gunned down in the line of duty. The breaking details in just a few moments.
Meanwhile, the president and vice president-elect kick off a Thank You America tour today. First stop, Carrier in Indiana, where Mr. Trump just helped save 1,000 American jobs. But not everybody's impressed.
If he is successful in doing that 804 more times, then he will meet the record of manufacturing jobs that were created in the United States while President Obama was in office.
Of course, anything you can do, they can do better.
Right. And it's a new challenge going viral. Burn the American flag. Why are these protesters so mad? Well, because a tweet from President-elect got under their skin. That's President-elect Trump. Let me just remind you, your mornings are better because you're finally wearing something and you're with friends.
How do you know they're finally wearing something?
Because it took forever for them to get dressed today. That's my image. I can see, much like Romper Room, remember when you used to stare into that mirror at the end?
Nancy.
Yes.
Right, and they used to say that? I could actually
see
the
Brian,
people.
I see Ainsley,
exactly.
I see Joel, I see Heather with the news.
America's finally dressed.
Good morning. Good morning, everybody. We've been following this story throughout the night and all morning long. It is a serious one. We begin on the West Coast. New details in a Fox News alert. An 8-year-old boy and an 11-year-old girl have now just been rescued from the Washington State home where a police officer was shot and killed last night. That suspect barricading himself and holding those children hostage for nearly 13 hours. The police officer who was killed, a 17-year veteran of the Tacoma Police Force. He was responding to a domestic disturbance call when he was shot multiple times with a rifle. That suspect then turned the gun on the officer's partner. Listen to this.
Fire, partner down! See, my partner's down inside the residence. Copy. Partner's down inside the residence. There's 4 to 5 shots in the house. Copy, 4 to 5 shots inside. I was able to return fire, but I don't know if I hit him.
Well, the officer has not been identified yet. Nearly 100 people, you can see right here, coming to honor him as his body left the hospital. We were praying for that family this morning. Extreme weather right now. Alabama under a state of emergency as a powerful storm rips across the south. This morning, a powerful image showing a little girl pulling her doll from the rubble where her house used to stand. 3 people in her town east of Huntsville, Alabama, were killed in that violent tornado. It lasted just 2 minutes. Wind speeds hitting more than 110 miles per hour. And then in Tennessee, a tornado claims the life of a volunteer firefighter and his wife. Storms also downing power lines and leaving entire neighborhoods in ruins. Politics now, less than 3 hours, Wisconsin kicking off the election recount spearheaded by Jill Stein, the Green Party candidate on a roll after filing another recount request in Michigan. The Clinton camp wants all hands on deck in that battleground state, begging volunteers to help oversee the recount. President-elect Donald Trump beat her in Michigan by 11,000 votes. It is still going on. Didn't think we'd hear battleground state for a while, but now we're saying that again.
Well,
in a sense.
It's battle.
Yes.
Right.
They're still battling. All right, thank you.
Well, President-elect Donald Trump back to the battleground states today, kicking off his Thank You America tour. He's starting in Indiana.
That's right. And it's kind of a twofold victory lap as he and Vice President-elect Mike Pence celebrate a major win for 1,000 American workers.
Peter Ducey is live outside Trump Tower in New York City with the details. So much news happening yesterday, Peter. A lot of people didn't really focus on this job save.
Well, there's going to be a lot of talk about it today, especially once the president-elect and the vice president-elect show up at this plant in Carrier to explain the deal that they made with the plant to save these 1,000 jobs at the factory in Indiana. We do expect to hear from the president-elect about what a victory this is for him, but he's saying he thinks it's a good deal for Carrier as well. He tweeted last night this: "Look forward to going to Indiana tomorrow in order to be with the great workers of Carrier. They will sell many air conditioners." Late last night, Carrier lifted the curtain themselves on some of the negotiations that the transition team had had with them over the last several weeks since the election. And they say in part that the announcement that's going to be made today is possible because the incoming Trump-Pence administration has emphasized to us its commitment to support the business community and create an improved, more competitive U.S. business climate. The incentives offered by the state were an important consideration as well. And those incentives do seem to have won the incoming president and his administration some fans among people who weren't before this happened.
I was not a huge Trump supporter. You know, I didn't really know how to take Mr. Trump. But I'm glad that he actually lived up to a promise and stuck with it, and I'll gladly throw some support to him. And if I get a chance to shake his hand tomorrow to thank him for saving my job, I'll gladly do that.
So 2 stops on the Thank You Victory Tour today for the incoming president-elect and vice president-elect. They're going to be at that Carrier plant, then they're going to be at an arena in Cincinnati. And as for this deal that saved all the jobs, the transition team says there's more where that came from. Back to you.
That's a tease. All right, Peter Doocy, really kind of our traffic reporter out there on Fifth Avenue. Peter, thank you very much.
The answer to traffic, yes. Hey, by the way, tonight on Fox News Channel, what Peter was referring to as a thank you tour, we're going to be covering it live, the speeches, the pomp, the circumstance, 17,000 expected to show up, so it's going to be electric. And I'm wondering, is this a prompter speech, or is this a speech off the back of
Probably a little
I don't think so. I think it'll be a thank you, thank you, thank you. I don't think he has to have a prompter for that. We'll see, though.
Right. At this point, with Ambassador John Bolton as a Fox News contributor, does he have all his answers on the prompter, or does he just answer extemporaneously?
He's got it
Are you scripted, Ambassador?
No more than you are, Brian.
Okay, so that's no.
Ambassador, so you met with Vice President-elect yesterday. You're going to meet with Donald Trump tomorrow. What happened in the meeting with Mike Pence?
Nice try. You know, I am old school on this subject. I think really it's obviously a matter for the president-elect to decide what he's going to reveal about his decision-making process. He can choose to reveal it, but I don't think it's really up to me or anybody else, frankly, to divulge the circumstances. This is not an issue just in the transition. I think this is you see how the doctrine of executive privilege fits in here, that a president has to have confidentiality to make important decisions.
Absolutely. And we understand you're not going to reveal anything about what you want to talk to him about, and you're not going to badmouth the other candidates. However, you know, we've been
narrowing the scope here very well.
I know, pretty much. We're going to get back to just talking about the weather here in a second. But for the most part, over the last week or so, Ambassador, we've heard it's the Final Four, and your name was not on that list. So did your name get added to the list after the chat?
Well, here's a thought, Steve. You know, sometimes the press gets things wrong. It has happened, I know, occasionally. I don't know. I'm not familiar with the decision-making process, even if I were going to talk about it, which I'm not.
Gotcha. All right, I got something for you. You're kind enough to come on my radio show a lot, and you're always great. Lindsey Graham came on yesterday, and he said this, and you just got booked, so I did not know this ahead of time. He said, I'm a big John Bolton fan. I'm in charge of the State Department's budget. I get 5 people working for me. I don't have enough people to go in and turn the State Department upside down. John Bolton knows where the bodies are buried at the State Department. We need to make it easier to fire people. We need to make it a more efficient place. Bolton sees the world for what it is, not for what the people want it to be. So I am a big John Bolton fan. Would you, if you get this job, do what Lindsey Graham wants you to do?
Well, you know, in my book, which is out of print, so I'm not flacking for it by saying this, but I talk at length about what changes need to be made at the State Department. It's not a question simply of a management restructuring. It needs a cultural revolution for a lot of reasons. And I think that's important going forward because of the damage that's done to American interests by not having a department, which is what we need to be effective advocating American interests.
Well, Ambassador, would you explain for the folks at home who don't understand the swamp that is Washington and the swamp that is the State Department, how it operates? I mean, every couple of years you get a new Secretary of State in, but for the most part, a lot of the people stay there. They're career bureaucrats. So explain the culture at the State Department that you would like to change.
Well, just to give a perspective, there are almost 70,000 employees of the State Department worldwide, so it's a pretty big bureaucracy. And over the years, it's gotten the attitude that they're not there necessarily to follow what the president wants to do in foreign policy, that they're there to run foreign policy themselves. Very similar to the attitude of foreign ministries in major European countries. So I think a Secretary of State has to follow what Jim Baker said back in the George H.W. Bush administration. He said it publicly even before he went over. He said, I will be the president's envoy to the State Department and not the other way around.
And that's what you want to do. Go ahead, sir.
Right.
So what are the duties of the Secretary of State?
Well, primarily to advise the president on national security issues, to come up with suggestions for grand strategy for the United States to maintain America's place in the world that is critical to safeguarding our way of life here at home, and then to carry that policy out through diplomacy and all the other tools that we have available. I think it's important to understand the State Department is not just a diplomatic place, it's a political place. And again, to just look at Jim Baker, his memoir was called The Politics of Diplomacy. And I think that title alone tells you a lot about what the job involves.
Well, I tell you what, nobody knows more about what's going on in the world than Ambassador John Bolton, who's going to meet with President-elect Donald Trump tomorrow. Ambassador, thank you very much for joining us live today. Good luck tomorrow.
Well, you're very kind. I'll see Peter outside the building, maybe.
That's right. He's directing traffic, I think.
The first name that Donald Trump mentioned when asked when he became a candidate and who you look to for foreign policy, it was Bolton.
Yeah.
He goes, Ambassador Bolton. I really like what he has to say. That must mean something. If you want, we'll provide the clip to you. You can go in there and remind Donald Trump what he said in 2015.
Well, you're very kind to think of me.
All right. So they're
Thanks,
down to the
Ambassador.
final five.
That's
All
right.
right. Thanks, Ambassador.
It is a new challenge. Going viral, burn the American flag. Why are these protesters so mad? Because of a tweet from President-elect.
And what really happened during that dinner between our future president and Mitt Romney? A Romney insider on the Secretary of State sweepstakes coming to you live next.
These are people that have worked in these jobs. They don't necessarily love their jobs. They have really long hours. They've been there at companies like this for like 20 years. They build up a 401k so they can retire, and then the company moves to Mexico. So this is amazing because they're saving Christmas, like you said, for so many of these families, for 1,000 people at least. And they're hardworking Americans. That guy right there, he's never even voted Republican ever in his life until this election.
Your first job is
Donald Trump.
Yeah, your first job is to keep jobs. I get it, but you have to make a product that people can afford. Now, if Carrier, in order to respond to the president, has to jack up the prices on their products and lose the competitive edge, then there'll be some blowback. However, if you're able to cut corporate taxes and make it palatable to make things in this country, one thing can build on top of the other. And also, if all things are equal, maybe pushing a company to stay here would also be great.
You know, Brian,
they're getting tax breaks in Indiana.
When I was meeting with public,
Do almost everything for the kids, and then they're adults, and it's kind of like, okay, now what do I do? Mom and Dad aren't here to wipe my nose.
Right. Gosh.
Anyway, if you'd like more information about the adulting school, go to our website, foxandfriends.com. Meanwhile, 7:30 here in New York City, new details on the kidnapped mother, beaten and branded. Her husband now breaking his silence. But did he actually put his wife in more danger by talking to the media? Some are suggesting that.
Plus, the college president refusing to fly the American flag is confronted.
President-elect, why did you remove the flag?
I don't want to talk to you about it.
Don't you think you owe it to the veterans to explain yourself?
I don't want to talk to you about it.
Jesse Waters putting him on the spot, and we're going to show you that interview coming up next.
Wonder how his foot feels right now. All right, welcome back to Fox and Friends. You know, Donald Trump sent out a tweet earlier this week, or was it last week?
A few days ago,
it's all kind of a blur.
Yeah, it's a few days ago.
Actually, it was
the flag burning one.
It was about 15 minutes after you did the segment on Hampshire College, where you know it all started the day after the election. They lowered the flag to half staff because Hillary lost, and then the next day somebody took the flag down and burned it. And since then, they have absolutely removed all flags and have no intention of ever putting any up again.
That's right. So Donald Trump, I guess he was watching Fox News. He tweeted out this: nobody should be allowed to burn the American flag. If they do, there must be consequences, perhaps loss of citizenship or year in jail.
So these kids started burning the American flag and putting it basically in Donald Trump's face.
A flag burning challenge, what they did. They took some pictures. They burned 2 flags in front of his hotel, and then we just burn these 2 flags at Trump International and challenge people to burn more flags.
So what do you think about that? Is they showing their freedom of speech there and exercising what they think the president-elect overstepped? Do you agree with their message? Do you agree with their pilgrim hats?
What did you say that was so profound when Judge Napolitano was on here? What were the exact words?
I did not notice a pilgrim hat.
You mean,
you're right.
It's amazing that if you have to drill down to a profound statement, that we only could drill down to one that I made. I feel kind of bad about that.
Everything you say is profound.
Right.
There was something
you said something profound.
Really, really good. You said something like, they have the right to do this. You might not agree with it, but it was something like that. But our soldiers have gone to war for our country to give you that right, even though we all think it's despicable.
Because it's a right, it doesn't mean it is right.
That's right. That's what you said.
Right.
Okay. So the guy who made the determination at Hampshire College is the president of the college. There he is. I believe his name is John Lash. Jesse Waters tracked this guy down and wanted to ask him why he said no more flags on Hampshire College. Here's what happened, and just feel sad for Jesse Waters' foot, because clearly he's got his foot in the door to keep it open. Watch this.
Hey, President Lash, how are you? Jesse Waters with the O'Reilly Factor, Fox News Channel. Good to see you.
Not good to see you.
Well, now that I have you here, why did you remove the American flag from campus?
Nice to meet you.
Don't you realize the whole country's laughing at you right now?
Come on, get your foot out of my door.
President Lash, why did you remove the flag?
I don't want to talk to you about it.
Don't you think you owe it to the veterans to explain yourself?
I don't want to talk to you about it. Would you please remove your foot from my door?
You made a lot of people very upset. I think you owe the country an explanation.
You're giving speeches.
Okay,
he's
so
not.
I don't think he wanted to talk to Jesse. Who was in his garage?
In his garage, right. It kind of comes out of the mist.
Right, that was great. So there you go. During happier times, that's his headshot.
All right, so he didn't want to talk to the media about it.
Listen, Hampshire College is in the midst of a public relations disaster. People all over the country are going, what the heck are they doing there?
Yeah, I guess it's a private school, right? That's the only way he's allowed to do that. If this were public, then people would have the right to fly the flag.
And a lot of kids are going to wonder, should they be spending $35,000 to $45,000 on a school? And if so, which one? A lot of people are going to say, you're not going, son or daughter, you're not going to that school anymore or ever.
I believe I saw the information when we did the initial story on this school. It's $62,000 a year to go to Hampshire College.
Well, clearly a very liberal school. I bet more people are going to say, I'm not going to send my kid there after the story.
$62,000. That's $250,000 education.
We better keep working.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah.
Well, mine are through college. Yahoo!
Well,
remember when Hillary Clinton said this?
We must accept this result and then look to the future. Donald Trump is going to be our president. We owe him an open mind and the chance to lead.
That was Hillary's concession speech the day after Donald Trump won. Well, now Hillary's campaign says it will take part in recounts orchestrated by the Green Party candidate Jill Stein. So how do Democrats feel about this? Here to weigh in, Democrat and former CIA operative and ops officer Brian Dean Wright. He joins us today from Portland, Oregon. Good morning to you, Brian.
Well, very good morning to you.
It's good to have you. Okay, so the next day after Hillary Clinton lost, you saw her on television. She gave that concession speech. You felt good in your heart because that's the way peaceful transition of power is supposed to happen, right?
That's right. Listen, nobody likes to lose, but we all do in life. And so she conceded. It was appropriate, and you move on.
It's that simple. But now we're learning that maybe she was not genuine because apparently, according to her campaign, the day after the election, she brought in lawyers and data analysts and all sorts of statistical people to try to figure out how to change the outcome, right?
Listen, if you concede, then the race is over.
Right.
If you don't want to concede, if you believe that there's still a reason that you might win, you don't concede. And you engage all these folks and you start diving into the numbers to figure out if you can win. And that just isn't the case. It wasn't the case. And now we're stuck talking about this when we, particularly as a party and certainly as a country, should be talking about the next couple of years working with the president at 2018 elections.
Sure. So and you have written an op-ed, because Hillary was not genuine at her concession speech and behind the scenes is working to do whoever knows what is going on. You're frustrated and you are ashamed of the Democrat Party, and you're a Democrat.
That's right. Listen, I can be fair. I can be frustrated in my party. That's American. Listen, I want to move forward. And we can't do that if we're taking time and money and effort to be focused on the past, on an election that we acknowledge that we lost. The president said is a reflection of the will of the people. So knock it off. Let's move forward as a country and as a party.
Yeah.
She just frustrates me.
Well, and so Jill Stein and her campaign initiated this, supposedly. And then it almost a couple of days ago sounded like the Hillary Clinton campaign reluctantly joined because they were going to do it anyway. But even that looks bogus now, too, doesn't it?
Listen, she has either a legal obligation to do this, which she does not. She has perhaps a moral obligation that she might feel, which she does not. So this is a political obligation. This is a political decision. And listen, I appreciate she has every right to do this. It's not a question of whether or not she can do this or she has the right to do it. It's the question of, does she have the people behind her, supporting her to do this? Ought she do this? Should she do this? And as a Democrat, that's really what this boils down to. And I think that the answer is no.
Ultimately, though, all parties say that it's not going to change the result, which brings in the motivation. And it looks like the motivation from all the parties involved is simply to make Donald Trump, the president, look illegitimate.
Well, I certainly have heard that argument, and I think it's a fair argument to make. And if that's the case, then shame on us, because at the end of the day, Donald Trump is our president. But it doesn't matter if I like that or not. He is. Right. The American people made their choice, and now it's time to move on. And again, we're not going to do that if we're spending lots of money and lots of time and energy on something that can't be changed.
Well, they're doing all that. Brian Dean Wright, former CIA ops officer, we thank you very much for joining us today from Portland, Oregon, with your frustration on what's going on with the recount. Thank you, Brian.
You bet. Thank you.
You bet.
I've had a wonderful evening with President-elect Trump. We had another discussion about affairs throughout the world, and these discussions I've had with him have been enlightening and interesting and engaging. I've enjoyed them very, very much.
What a difference 9 months can make. Romney, once critical of the future president, now on a short list, apparently down to 5, for Secretary of State. So what's going on behind the scenes? Here to weigh in is Brian Hook. Brian is a former senior advisor on foreign policy to Mitt Romney's 2012 campaign. He joins us from our nation's capital. Brian, good morning to you.
Hi, good morning.
Okay, let's go back. 9 months ago, you've known Mitt Romney pretty well. 9 months ago, when Romney was trying to blow up Donald Trump, nobody could really figure out why he was trying to do that to the standard bearer for the Republican Party. But that guy is lots different than the one who exited the dinner 2 nights ago.
Well, in politics, things are said and they're unsaid, and it happens in both political parties. I think there's a long history in America of presidents appointing their chief critics, and you don't have to look any farther than Ronald Reagan for that.
Sure.
He had a pretty difficult primary with George Bush, and then he named him as his vice president, and Barack Obama brought on Hillary Clinton as Secretary of State, and you can go back to Abraham Lincoln for examples of bringing into your cabinet a rival.
Sure, absolutely. And Donald Trump is a businessman. If he were to select Mitt Romney, another businessman, there's a saying in business, it's nothing personal, it's just business. So if they put their personal former animosity aside for the betterment of the country, that's terrific. Meanwhile, what do you think, Brian, is going on behind the scenes? What do you think happened at that dinner the other night over here in Midtown Manhattan?
By accounts from both sides, it was a very good and productive dinner, and you were playing some of Governor Romney's remarks after the dinner, and so they were much more extensive than they were after his first meeting. And so I think that's a real good sign of a deepening relationship. As you said, they're both businessmen, and Donald Trump has a lot of respect for what I think Mitt Romney accomplished at Bain Capital. And I think when he's considering the qualities that he wants in a Secretary of State, they match up very well with Mitt Romney.
You know, Brian, a lot of people think, okay, Mitt Romney, he ran the Olympics, he was the governor of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, but he doesn't have much international experience. But then again, when you think about what he did in 2012 when he was running for president, he was right about just about everything that would happen in the future.
Well, it's exactly right. He made a lot of foreign policy calls in 2011 that have all been vindicated. He was right on Iraq. He was right on Syria. He was right on Russia as a geopolitical threat. And he was right about expanding terrorism in West Africa and Mali. These are the kinds of qualities that you want in a Secretary of State, somebody who has shown consistently good judgment.
Okay. Brian Hook, former advisor to Mitt Romney, we thank you very much for giving us your point of view on what's going on behind the scenes. Thanks, Brian.
Thank you.
All right. Meanwhile, straight ahead, real estate is our next president's specialty. So what can he do to help the struggling housing market? Bob Massey, the property guy, coming up next. And sorry,
the holidays.
All right. Thank you, Brian. Well, we already have a good idea of what President Trump plans to do when it comes to keeping and creating good-paying jobs here in our country. But what about his plans for the housing market? How can he make housing great again? Fox News legal analyst Bob Massey is here. He's the host of The Property Man, as you know, on FNC. So, Bob, where does the president-elect need to start, in your opinion?
3 areas. Number one, loan modifications are going to mature again next year. It's going to cause a problem. 2, what we call zombie titles, those properties that are still for years in homeowners' names and they can't move on. And 3, the Mortgage Debt Relief Act expires this year. We have to get it extended. Those 3 areas, Mr. President-elect, please, you got to get a committee put together to take care of these problems to stabilize this housing market.
That Mortgage Relief Act that you're talking about, that means if your house is foreclosed on, you don't have to pay taxes. Is that a good thing? And what do you think needs to happen since it is going to expire?
Yeah, and I have to say, Angie, that a lot of the Republicans were against this, but what it basically means is exactly what you said. If you have a primary residence and it's foreclosed on or you short sold it and that debt was forgiven that you owed because the value was upside down, if it's prior, you don't have to pay taxes. And the problem is that if we don't extend that, with still a lot of properties out there that have not been foreclosed on, and then there's foreclosures, we're going to have, then people are going to be having ordinary income tax liability. That needs to be extended till we get this stabilized.
Bob, you mentioned zombie homes. What are those?
I actually have clients, Ainsley, that have been out of their home and still living in their home for 7 years. And they haven't made a payment. And they've begged the servicers, meaning the people that accept the payment every month, to take their home back. Please, I want to move on with my life. And they just, it's like it's in a black hole somewhere where they have no idea where the notes are. They have nothing. So these people still owe the money on the home, want to move on with their life, but when you pull their credit report, it still shows that debt's owed and it's still titled in their name. And they can't get anybody to listen to them. It's still a problem in our country, and that's why we call it a zombie. We need to wake them up and say, lenders, servicers, please, these people want to move on. Take the homes back. Do what we call deeds in lieu of foreclosure and get rid of these homes. They got to do it.
You know, he's putting a lot of focus on infrastructure. We know that he's built all these hotels and businesses and buildings here in New York City. Are you feeling positive about Donald Trump helping the housing market in the future?
Could not have anybody better, along with his incredible children, to understand the housing market. And the last thing, Ainsley, is this loan modification issue, which ties into what you're saying. Loan modifications are going to mature next year. Here's what that means real quick. A lot of people are only paying like interest-only payments. Next year, a lot of them were 5-year modifications. And the 5th year, they lock in for 30, 40 years. They're going to convert to principal and interest, which means their payments could double, which means foreclosures again and short sales. Got to change it. Please, Mr. President-elect, put a committee together and make it happen. And by the way, Ainsley, I bought your book for my youngest 2-year-old grandson. It's amazing. God bless you.
God bless you. Thank you so much. Give that grandchild a hug for us.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Bob.
Love him to death.
Counting the Star. And the Star, are you referring to Matt Lauer?
Yes, who signed a new contract. Finally, he's going to be able to make ends meet.
Yeah.
How many pounds?
I'm going to say a ton.
14 tons. That is
14 tons, that's 14 elephants.
So I was 13 tons off.
That is a big tree.
You were not close on any of your stats.
At least I tried. You
I know, I just kept my mouth shut because I knew I'd bombed.
So even though there was extra security, given the fact, we're in crazy times these times, and Donald Trump lives a couple of blocks away, and there was rain, kind of put a damper on things. Nonetheless, it is officially the Christmas season in New York.
I would just say, write us, too. Are you with me? There's got to be something to do besides look at a tree. Pony rides, golfing, mini golf. Besides go there, there's got to be something else to do besides look at it.
The ice skating rink is right there.
You can never get on the ice skating rink. You got to know somebody.
Gosh, you're just a negative Nancy today.
So at your house, when you put up the Christmas tree, do you also have a pony ride?
Right, good point.
No, but we have a TV and a kitchen. There's other stuff to do besides see my tree.
Look, it's got 50,000 lights. It's 14 tons. I mean, it's gigantic. It's a marvel of nature.
Watch this. Okay, I just saw the tree. I went to the city. I went through the tunnel. I sat on the bridge. That's all I had. Give me a pony. I want a pony.
That's like his Jerry Seinfeld moment. You talked like him.
It's from New York. We're both from New York. We're both Massapequa.
And they both whine a lot.
Yeah. And that long pause is what you want to avoid in television.
Really? Very dramatic.
That clearly says whatever I said wasn't funny.
No, it wasn't. It was like, when do we change gears? We don't know exactly when. Ready?
No. All right, change gears.
So anyway, they lit the Christmas tree last night in New York City, and Christmas came early for 1,000 Carrier employees out in the great state of Indiana when it was revealed that Donald Trump and Mike Pence have saved 1,000 of their jobs.
That is the best story. I was so happy to hear that. No matter how you voted, you've got to think this is great, because all these folks thought, you know what, I've worked for this company for decades. My 401k is going to be gone. My pension's going to be gone because this company is going to go down to Mexico.
I'm going to lose my house.
Right. How am I going to put food on the table? And then Christmas season, and they learned that their jobs are saved. It's a great story.
So the White House looking to build on that momentum or extinguish the flame. You make the call.
The President-elect has indicated that he deserves credit for that announcement. And I guess what I would observe is that if he is successful in doing that 804 more times, then he will meet the record of manufacturing jobs that were created in the United States while President Obama was in office. There were 805,000 manufacturing jobs that weren't just protected or saved, but actually created while President Obama was in office. So President Obama has set a high standard, and President-elect Trump can meet that standard if this Carrier deal is completed.
Here's the thing, Mr. Ernest, with all due respect, Donald Trump saved 1,000 jobs. He's not even president yet.
That's right.
Also, I wonder how many of the White House press corps members sitting there at the White House were thinking, I'm just sitting here looking at Josh Earnest. I wish there was a pony ride.
And with all due respect, Josh Earnest, those thousands of jobs that he saved were going down to Mexico during the Obama administration. And guess how he saved all those 800,000 jobs? Through your taxpayer dollars with the stimulus.
Well, one thing he's doing is using his contacts with CEOs, people that we couldn't get on the phone and most politicians couldn't. When Tim Cook, he's talking with Bill Gates, the guy who used to start at Microsoft, as well as what he's done with his relationship with Ford, and he's trying to get them to bring manufacturing or keep it here. Yeah. So he's not just sitting there hoping.
When you talk about Ford, Lincoln is going to stay. The Lincoln division is going to stay in Kentucky. And when I love this story, the Nabisco company that left Chicago and moved down to Mexico, now they're saying, hey, Mr. Trump, we'd like to talk to you, too, because we might be interested in coming back to America.
Sure. There are 3 other plants left. Nabisco is now Mondelez, who makes Oreos. 3 plants. One is 2 miles from my house. Hundreds of my neighbors work for that company, so it would be terrible to have them lose their jobs. So let's hope that Mr. Trump, this is just a preview of coming attractions, and they're able to save a lot of jobs going forward.
Keep Oreos in America. That's all we can ask. Meanwhile, Heather Nauert, while we work on that, you work on this.
Yeah, I've got an update on a story we've been following all. Donald Trump suggested that those who set fire to the flag should lose their citizenship or go to jail. Protesters have been lighting the symbol of American freedom on fire outside Trump Tower in New York City. But, of course, it's protected free speech, and the Supreme Court has found that, too. Well, ready for a pop quiz? The internet isn't. Take a look at this tweet going viral this morning. A picture asking, when giraffes go to work, do you think they put a tie at the top or the bottom of their necks? asking for a friend. Well, the responses are really neck and neck online. So what do you think about this? Let us know on Facebook and Twitter, or send us an email at friends@foxnews.com. It reminds me of the dog one, you know, where the dog put on the pants,
Sure.
and do the pants go all the way up, or they just cover the hind legs?
Well, regarding the giraffe, I would think that you would have it at the top just to conceal the neck.
Let's look at that.
Right?
To conceal the neck.
What do you think, Heather?
I like the top too.
Okay, Brian.
Ainsley?
I think you always the closest to the ear as possible. That's always been the
Closest
rule
to
of
the
time.
ear.
All right.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
so y'all all are the same. I'm going to have to go with the opposite then. I like it
Lamar?
lower.
All right.
Did you know the giraffe is the tallest land animal in the world?
There you go. It's also fast. Do you notice? You ever try to chase a giraffe?
Not as fast as a cheetah.
Right. Cheetah's faster than a
Cheetah's the
giraffe.
fast
Have you
animal.
ever tried to chase a giraffe?
I'm just making small talk.
I've sat next to Brian on the couch for 20 years. First time he's ever asked.
Well, I never.
Wait a minute, I'm having a flashback to Kansas. Yeah, there was the one time. I was in fourth grade.
So you get back
At the
here.
zoo.
Right, and it didn't come back. They never listened.
All right, Democrats stick with Nancy Pelosi and the status quo. So how do they expect to fix their party with the same old guard? Congressman Seth Moulton is a Democrat, and this morning he is wondering the same thing. He's going to join us live next.
On Capitol Hill as the party chooses to stay the course.
I have a special spring in my step today because this opportunity is a special one to lead the House Democrats, bring everyone together as we go forward.
Yep. In a late night email, Pelosi now claiming things will be different, and some of those changes, I guess, are overdue for some. Coming right now to talk about that is Democratic Congressman Seth Moulton, who was pretty transparent in saying that he wanted change and thought Congressman Ryan would have been the ticket. Having 60-plus votes among the Democratic caucus, what message did that send, Congressman?
Well, it's significant. If you think about it, Nancy Pelosi has been our leader for 13 years. She's had 13 years to get the votes and support of members of our caucus. Tim Ryan only ran for 2 weeks, and he did it over the Thanksgiving holiday, and yet a third of the caucus voted for him. So it's a clear sign that many members of our party are hearing the message from the American voters that the status quo is not going to cut it, and we've got to change.
The Congressman, he also was quoted as saying, I'll just paraphrase, he said this is becoming a coastal party, a regional party. He's concerned about losing a lot of these blue-collar voters. Are you?
I am, and the irony here is that a lot of our economic policies are great for working class families. They expand the middle class. A lot of Trump's tax cuts that will dramatically increase our deficit just go to the wealthy few. And so we actually have some great policies, and yet our message is failing to resonate with middle America. So we've got a lot of work to do, and we've got to question whether we have the right message and whether we have the right messengers.
Right. After the last 8 years what the White House has done and made it, I guess, tough, what Hillary Clinton would say, for her to win. So in the big picture, how much is Nancy Pelosi to blame for this? And how much is Barack Obama to blame for the state of the Democratic Party?
There's a lot of blame to go around, but the most important thing is that we've got to take responsibility for our failures. I'm really new to politics, but I was a Marine platoon commander for several years, and my job description was very simple. It was one sentence. You are responsible for everything your platoon does or fails to do. Full stop. Well, we failed in this last election. Our election results have been terrible over the last 4 election cycles or more. And so we've got to take responsibility for that. And there aren't many party leaders who are standing up and taking responsibility and saying, here's a new strategy, here's a new way forward, we've got to make some change.
Congressman, something did change. She named a whole bunch of people on our leadership committee, a bunch of vice chairs and other people to expand beyond Steny Hoyer, who's in his 70s, and Clyburn, who's in his 70s, and she's in her 70s.